Little Demon is bloody, gory, vulgar, obscene, horrific, crass, chaotic, shocking, and most of all, badass. In just so many ways that absolutely will not fly on YouTube.
Look at that guy. He's got a bird head and he craps bubbles. I thought that was pretty cool.
I imagine most people haven't heard about this show, and for those who have, they maybe saw the 6.7 on IMDb and these somewhat plain-looking character designs and thought, nah, that doesn't pass the smell test. Let me tell you, you're dead wrong. The series has actually been review bombed by Christian groups who are worried the show promotes Satanism, which is extremely funny to me, is potentially a sell point to some of you, but has definitely harmed the show's reach. In fact, I'm gonna flip it around on them and use their own words to give you a synopsis of what this show is about.
Man, I saw some stuff that was just so disturbing. Now, I had heard about this show.
Disney's been doing all kind of things subliminally for years, but now it's just boom. Slow motion. Boom! Look at this evil!
Why would the actual logo of an actual organization be used in a fictional show? Are Hollywood Satanists using mass media to proselytize their religion?
What is Disney doing over there? Who's over there at Disney with this demonic agenda? The show is literally about the devil reuniting with his daughter, who is the Antichrist.
Antichrist in our version of it is a 13-year-old girl.
She says it's a 13-year-old little girl. 13 is obviously a number taken from the occult as well.
And you're gonna see the dark demonic agenda behind it. It's not just a cartoon.
Talking about boiling babies, talking about the Antichrist, full-blown demonic jokes, demonic imagery.
It's all about the ongoing agenda of normalizing and even glorifying Satanism and the general concept of evil to the masses.
Even her real name is Lucy. I'm not gonna read too much into that.
You heard that right. 39 years ago, when Danny DeVito had his baby girl, he was laying the groundwork for his Satanist agenda.
Lucy and I and Jake, my son, who's also a part of Little Demon, with Aubrey, and also this guy Dan Harmon, who does that Rick and Morty show. He's also a producer.
If you average the per episode scores, it sits at about a 7.6, which I think is a much more accurate placement. Potentially even still a little low.
Care to dance?
I think we're just dancing as a group, like a group thing, you know?
No, a group thing, yes, of course. I'll be on my way.
I already know what the number one critique of the show will be, because it's the exact reason I originally passed on it for about a month as well. The character designs look like they were pulled straight from Bitmoji. Maybe a little bit Go Animate, which is not really better, but kind of exactly like a Bitmoji. I don't know who in their right mind signed off on that, but I think once you see it in motion, it's much easier to forgive. When 95% of adult animated comedies look like this, zoomed way out, minimal animation, and just overall stiff, flat posing, the bar is incredibly low. Look at how these characters talk and engage. They are constantly moving. Their expressions are complex and varied. The body language is exceptional. The camera work is often dynamic. And most importantly, they go all out for the action sequences. Layer in these detailed painted backgrounds and the shading work on the characters, and Little Demon quickly and wonderfully overcomes the limitations of their generic character designs. And one credit to their design choice is that the plain-looking humans really make the over-the-top demons, monsters, and ghouls stand out. The first season of Little Demon absolutely took me by surprise, and it may be the best new adult comedy of the year, animated or otherwise. It's certainly the best R-rated comedy, and by far the most R-rated.
I forgot about this coupon.
I want to at least try to avoid an age restriction on this video, so as many people as possible can hear about how damn good Little Demon is. But considering the content of this show, that's gonna be pretty difficult. It does mean I now have the unique challenge of selling you on why the show is worth watching without being able to show you many of its coolest sequences or any of its funniest jokes. Using those confines to my advantage while while pitching you on why you should watch Little Demon, know that any footage I include is only what I hoped YouTube would allow me to show. So if you are excited by any of what you see here, know that the show itself is probably about 10 times crazier than that. And while I will use plenty of examples and footage, I do want to stay spoiler-free on some of the larger storylines. For example, I don't plan to show a single second of footage from the season finale, because to me, it was by far the best episode, and I wouldn't want to spoil any of the plot or anything cool about it. I want it to surprise you in all the ways it surprised me. I only found this show because I had 10 minutes to kill one morning and thought I'd get a kick out of watching Danny DeVito see what kind of questions people on the internet ask about him. I was right, by the way, it was a fun video. And towards the end, he mentioned Little Demon. I have not seen a single ad for this show anywhere. That is the only reason I know about it. If you've stuck with me this long before I get into the nitty-gritty of the show, truth be told, Smiling Friends is probably my actual favorite new adult animated comedy from this year. I'll include links in the description to 2 videos that nearly perfectly capture what it is I love about that series. And until the day I can think of a video concept or angle that I feel adds a unique perspective to the reviewing and analyzing of Smiling Friends, I'll put that one on the back burner and will instead advocate wholeheartedly for what has become my second favorite adult animated comedy in 2022.
I hate to admit it, but I am rock hard right now.
I think what Little Demon does best is creating a family drama that happens to be filled with satanic lore and witchcraft.
Boom! Look at this evil!
We have an awkward, troubled teen, an overbearing, protective single mother, and an absentee and unreliable father. Their complicated relationship, messy home life, and battle for custody are the heart of the series.
Hi, honey. I'm a chicken now.
Rooting these characters in the real world with their tangled, outrageous, yet often relatable relationships give us something to hang on to, while everything else is constantly blowing up, both metaphorically and literally.
I hope the rest of your day was less explosive.
Yep, it was.
At times, it gets a little caught up in the absurd and maybe forgets to ground itself, but it mostly worked for me. Our main character, Christina, you know, like Christina,
Of course she named you that.
is struggling in her suburban life after being constantly moved around the country.
So, moving 14 times in 8 years wasn't for work.
No, it was so your dad couldn't track us. Except when we left Vermont, I cannot deal with those fucking hippies.
The series kicks off with Chrissy getting her first period, which activates latent demonic powers and acts as a homing beacon, revealing Chrissy to her father, Satan! We learn that Chrissy is the literal Antichrist, on top of being an average teenage girl attending high school and making friends, afterwards trying to do good with her unholy gifts. The story is told across all 10 episodes and has Chrissy constantly fighting with her mother for both hiding the truth from her and in the process creating this unstable home life. She attempts to form a relationship with her father, again, the literal devil. As you might expect, he's not the most reliable guy.
Oh my god! I've tasted a lot of flaws, but this is the best I've ever tasted!
And absolutely has ulterior motives for reconnecting with his long-lost daughter.
I'm the Antichrist and I'll sign the pact because I love my dad. Let's make a contract.
Laura, the mother, wants to do what's best for Chrissy while confronting her problematic parenting and often selfish choices. There's a compromise where they try to have this shared custody of Chrissy, but they absolutely hate each other, yet there's still kind of a bit of chemistry there. The way these 3 main characters play off each other, grow together, and constantly surprise us is what makes the series so likable. They somehow fit all that in while introducing a new freaky creature, some unseen corner of the afterlife, or a new hardcore magical ability every single week. I think the way it has both serialized and episodic storytelling is done very, very well. The individual episodes have a little bit of this monster of the week thing going on.
Huh. Checkmate. Monster of the week. Check.
infrequently dipping their toes into horror, and regularly introducing new powers. A side note there, almost every time they do this, it's developed further and becomes significant to future storylines, which I really appreciated. Like in episode 2, Chrissy learns how to possess people. That has its own contained story, but also becomes something she practices and frequently uses throughout the season. Little Demon maybe isn't as deep or contemplative with its character explorations as something like BoJack Horseman, although it still has some of that. Neither is it as lightning fast in its delivery of jokes and concepts as Rick and Morty, but again, it still has some of that. In fact, the more I wrestled with drawing an accurate comparison to other animated comedies, I came to realize how thoroughly Little Demon manages to stand on its own. I think it handles the more serious subjects quite well, with a strong focus on that family dynamic and the central coming-of-age story.
So, don't forget it's our weekly deer skinning tonight. Gonna show you how to remove soft tissue from the hide.
Bum.
All bolstered by a fairly unique brand of humor, one that some may find too edgy, and I'll agree it can be here and there. I'll go more in depth on those things in the later sections of the video. Right now I'm painting a broader picture.
Look at the painting she made. It's clearly a cry for help.
Even more so than the storytelling and those family dynamics, where I think this series has really shined is in its insane, over-the-top body horror and gore. Some will call it gratuitous, because it does often escalate into a full-on bloodbath, but since when is that overtly a bad thing? These creature designs are so cool, and they so often do the weirdest, most twisted things drawn out in such spectacular ways. Throw in a fun cast of characters, well thought out, interesting lore that provides a fairly unique interpretation of the underworld and hell, and baby, you got a stew going. The show is doing a lot incredibly well. I don't think it's a perfect first season. It flirted with some try-hardiness now and again. I would say the first 4 episodes are good, but still with their own great moments. But I believe episode 5 onward is where the show really takes off. There's such a strong foundation here and a confidence in its tone that makes me so excited to see more. If it is lucky enough to get a sophomore season, I believe they'll be able to come back and hit the ground running, shake off some of those freshman faults, and develop into something really excellent. I've always loved a show that crafts a world that could only really exist through animation. Whether it be about mystical fantasy lands in Adventure Time, or futuristic planet-hopping sci-fi in Futurama, or futuristic planet-hopping sci-fi in Rick and Morty, or futuristic planet-hopping sci-fi in Final Space? Anyway, point being, animation is unbound by reality. The more a show can capitalize on that, the better.
Ah, shit. Thought it was gonna be balloons.
And I had no idea how much I wanted an R-rated satanic entry in the pantheon of animated settings. Little Demon is primarily set in the real world, but one where freaky occult magic is real and characters frequently hop into other dimensions. In that sense, it is a lot like Rick and Morty. One family that's kind of at the center of all this chaos, and a real world surrounding it that doesn't really know what to make of it. I've really loved all things unholy and supernatural, I think going back to growing up with Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which is probably why I love Laura so much. She's basically Buffy and full-powered Willow merged into one. Believe me, she's got her own section in this video. Overall, the world building in this show has been pretty top tier. It has what feels to me like totally original styles of magic, monsters, and creatures with these unique characteristics and defining features. And a totally original take on the concept of hell that I really loved. Different factions in this other world are competing to harvest souls, and Satan is among the most powerful of them. In his hell, souls spend eternity in this bastardized paradise.
Look at our friend over there, rollerblading around the room, happier than a pig in shit.
I guess.
It has absolute consequence-free freedom. They are fulfilling their wildest dreams.
What the fuck? You call that free will?
Yeah, Yeah, see? That guy wants a rollerblade. Those guys want to eat rollerbladers. Free will means no limits. He'll regenerate eventually.
One major thing I'd love to see expanded on in future seasons are the horror elements. This show very infrequently slides into that territory and handles it pretty well. But they only ever just touch on it, using it in passing and never pushing it to its limits. Gushing fountains of blood and mayhem is fun, but I think the show needs a slightly stronger balance of that home life, the occult, the violence, and more horror. There's definitely room to perfect the formula. One of the things I will most heavily praise is the characters. Chrissy is of course our lead. She's a little smarmy, maybe kinda edgy, she's definitely picked up some bad habits from her mother, but is mostly just awkward and is still clearly finding herself. And she embodies many of the teenage tropes of rebellion, bolstered by having literal superpowers. Her own sense of humor and use of her powers is often juvenile, in a way that felt like maybe some of the worst jokes in the show.
And, pee-pee poo-poo.
Pee-pee poo-poo's my catchphrase.
That could be our generation's got milk.
Yet, even beyond her simply being 13 years old and thus quite juvenile, they found a way to give that substance within the storytelling, and managed to layer in a legitimate payoff at the end of the episode.
Pee-pee. Poo-poo. Pee-pee poo-poo.
So what felt like a lazy joke and had me rolling my eyes mattered, in a dumb way, but it did matter. Considering Chrissy is the main character, it's maybe odd that I have the least to say about her. She exhibits so many teenage tropes, and while she does have plenty of funny moments herself, she's often used as a bit of a straight man to the insanity that's happening around her. But it was also clear in the progression of the season that her character is only just taking shape. There's an episode where she's trying to fit in by acting closer to how you might expect a teenage antichrist to act and look.
Some of us are interested in growth, not just being a shill.
I literally support anarchy.
That outfit is anarchy.
But that only gets her into trouble, and she pulls back from that more confident in herself. I genuinely liked the way that they included a comparison to show us, here's what you might expect. And Chrissy is not that. And by the season's end, the new trajectory that she's set on is really exciting and one I'd love to see paid off. Next, there's Satan. There's a connection in my brain between Danny DeVito's voice and little gremlin characters, and I can't really compute hearing his voice coming out of this white bread, average-sized cardigan-wearing dad. I honestly don't think I've fully come to terms with it yet, even after having watched the full season and then spent this time reviewing it. Luckily, every time he visits Earth, he needs to possess a body, so we get to see him as things like a dead chicken, an armadillo corpse, and a cockroach.
It's me, the devil, in a dead armadillo.
And those all feel much more appropriate. I can tell he had fun voicing the character, and I imagine it's really special to make this with his daughter. But we have to acknowledge Danny is now 77 years old. His voice doesn't quite carry as powerfully as it once did.
If I've told you once, I told you 1,000 times.
So the moments where Satan is full-on raging aren't nearly as intimidating and over the top as I had hoped.
Shit's about to get biblical, bitches.
But he still gives a wonderful performance every time the show slows down for more sentimental moments.
Come on, don't you want to chew your Yeti bone? Or fetch your Gorgon balls? Snake with arms, I told you to leave me alone.
Which is bound to be a divisive part of the character for some, who just want to see him as this unstoppable mayhem-causing hate machine. But we're instead shown that Satan already has a long history of being the Prince of Darkness, and he's sort of slowed down with age and is considering starting a new phase of his life. So in that sense, Danny DeVito having kind of aged sort of fits the character. Don't get me wrong, Satan is not a good guy, but as a character, he's starting to see value in things other than maiming and torture.
Hey everybody, this is my daughter. Kiss her ass or I'll slaughter your children.
I think it's an interesting spin on what could have easily been a one-dimensional character. And then Chrissy's mother, Laura. Oh, Laura. Easily the best character. And when I say the best character, I don't think I just mean this show. She is like the best character. I love her.
Darlene?
I should warn you, I get violent at hide and seek. Ask Chrissy.
She's a bit of an asshole and very casually badass in ways that are comparable to Rick Sanchez. These are not similar characters. I don't want to give that impression. But the way he always seems prepared for any situation with weird gizmos and gadgets popping out of who knows what orifices when a threat emerges, making him kind of feel invincible, Laura has that too. But every time she busts out some unexpected power, she does so with this confident and intimidating nonchalance, even though it looks like she's inflicting so much literal pain on herself and just gritting through it. So in a way, she's more badass than Rick.
Holy shit, that was painful.
The tattoos all over her skin are runes for her Wiccan powers. She'll trace lines and grabbing and MacGyvering random objects while chanting satanic tongues to do something insanely unexpected, and it's the coolest every single time. And while Laura in many ways inhabits the role of the asshole character, her heart is always on display. She stuffs it down, but we can always readily see how much she cares. Laura is constantly trying her best, but considering the unpredictability of her life, she's left continually questioning whether she's fit to be a mother at all. And that introspection is really, really well handled. I've loved Aubrey Plaza's work for years, ever since she played this borderline emo, smart aleck, quietly passive-aggressive mischief maker, April, on Parks and Rec.
I found a dead rabbit on the side of the road and I cut its feet off and made it into a Lucky Charm.
Baby, you are so creepy.
But I never knew how good of a voice actress she was. I guess I should have known after the Grumpy Cat movie.
Jingle bells, Christmas smells.
Seriously, I think she is the standout performance here, even outshining a veteran like Danny DeVito. Laura has this raging fury and absolute confidence in herself and her powers.
13 years preparing for the day this rotting chode would make his play and bridge our worlds.
But that is constantly being challenged as she struggles to be the mother she wants to be. Something she's not really able to do while trying to keep Chrissy safe. Her blunt and sassy yet powerful approach isn't going to help her with the local housewives or dealing with troubles at school. So she has to tiptoe around that, but is clearly boiling over at all times. In fact, that's central to the story of one episode, even though it's definitely a recurring trait. And in the more serious moments, she shows this fear, sorrow, desperation, and uncertainty and vulnerability, undergoing some major self-discovery. It all shows how much range she has. Every delivery, from chanting in tongues to shouting out commands, sprinkles of motherly love.
I know exactly what I'm doing.
Oh, Jesus Christ, Chrissy, no you don't. You have evil in your DNA.
Hey, come on, you're not that bad.
And her more touching moments.
I was a mess before I had you. That's sort of how I had you. So, yeah, you didn't ruin anything. You made me better.
Are all flawless.
That's right. He better not. Because if he did, I was say something to him, say something back, so.
I feel like I kind of buried the lead here, because I would recommend you watch this show for her character alone, but there's a lot more to it than that. So I didn't want to take away from the focus too much, even though I gave her the prominent placing of the thumbnail. I do want you to watch the show, so I don't want to dissect every little thing, so I'm gonna kind of speed through the surrounding characters, which have mostly been excellent. Who doesn't love Satan's servant, Snake with Arms? That's his name, by the way, not just a description.
Come back here, I want to chop you out.
Okay, Snake with Arms.
And the most important secondary characters are Bennigan and Darlene.
Welcome back. You should take a shower. You smell like rot.
Where the hell am I gonna find a cadaver?
There's only so far I'll go for you, Laura. I'll see you at the party.
Who do stand up to the rest of the cast. They're extremely well acted and surprisingly complex. A nerdy friend and nosy neighbor are nothing new, but neither rely solely on those tropes for their humor and interactions. We slowly learn more about these characters, and the ways their personalities are expanded upon fits really well. And something that I found especially fun, there are a crapload of cameos. Michael Shannon, William Jackson Harper, Patrick Wilson, June Diane Raphael, Shangela, Dave Bautista, Pamela Adlon, Mark Ruffalo, Rhea Perlman, and best of all, Danny DeVito's longtime friend, Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Welcome once again to the #1 game show in all of the realms.
God, I love Arnold. He even appears dressed as a reference to their co-starring classic, Twins. And who can forget Mel Brooks as this silly little worm creature?
What can I tell you? I love secreting.
And then, for some inexplicable reason, Richard Kind as himself. There are so many of these, and none of them are really used in this distracting, oh, look who's here sort of way. With the exception of Richard.
Richard Kind from Earth, York from Radio.
Rudolph, you stepped on my foot. What's the matter with you?
They're all playing characters, which is so much more fun. There's so many, I wouldn't doubt if I missed a few big ones along the way. And hey, if you do watch this series, stick around after the credits each time, starting with episode 3, because there is a whole entire arc for a seemingly throwaway character that plays out across the season, hidden at the end. It's an amazing running bit. I really enjoy watching creators like JXE rip apart unfunny adult animations, drawing attention to how common it is for poorly written shows to pause for you to soak in how funny the joke was.
I promise no more killing. Starting now.
So I appreciate that the jokes here actually flow and don't ever derail a scene.
This is selfish. And so are you.
I'm actually more mammal than a Oh, honestly, thought you said shellfish.
One of the worst things a show can do is overuse a joke and drive it straight into the ground. Little Demon is surprisingly good at knowing how to milk a joke without killing it. For the most part, they stick to one-offs, quickly delivering it and then moving right past.
Put him on. The Pope. You goofy rascal, you answer your own phone?
Meanwhile, when they do find an opportunity to farm several laughs out of one concept, I think they do so fairly effectively. Episode 9 introduced the Moth Boys by first having them get distracted staring at a light.
Thanks, bro. Classic us, right?
That's fairly simple and kind of obvious for moth-based demons, and it's a little funny on its own. They could have left it there. But as these characters come back, they later threaten to eat Chrissy like she's a piece of clothing.
I'm gonna scarf you down like you're a fucking scarf.
She then punches one in the genitals.
My balls! My moth balls!
And eventually torches one alive, shouting "Motherfucker."
You motherfucker!
I just typed that out in my script, and only now realized that it's even funnier than I thought, because it doesn't actually look any different. They are written the exact same. Those small handful of jokes are specific to the Moth Boys. You couldn't use them anywhere else. And they found room to slip them in without it feeling distracting, and honestly leaving me with the satisfied feeling that the gag had been fully explored. I'll admit, it took me a while to get into the swing of the humor, as it's not always that clever. It very much can be.
Wow, mutton chops? Who knew?
But a lot of what is funny is kind of just the way that these characters are. Something that irritated me at first, but I grew to really like, is anytime Satan threatens anyone. They felt kind of stupid.
The Grand Demon of Possession, Dark Lord of Ulrich, King of
Douche of Crapstown, population, you.
But more often than that, when you really analyze it, it's very malicious, often horrific, always crass, all jumbled together in a borderline childish kind of way.
Or I'll crawl into your brain and rewire it so every time you touch your butthole, it feels like you're covered in lava.
Ah, fuck.
At first I thought, butthole, they're just farming for a cheap laugh, but that is pretty specific. And the more I think about it, kind of unlike any other pre-existing string of words I've maybe ever heard before. And despite being juvenile, the more and more I actually thought through what he just said, it was a truly terrifying threat. Every time you go to the bathroom, you're gonna feel like you're burning alive? What the hell? I've never been a fan of substituting chains of bad words together in place of an actual joke. And while every character in this show curses, Satan is the only one who really does that. So they're staying consistent. And it actually became pretty funny over time to think that this Lord of Hell is so immature. My enjoyment of the humor in this series definitely increased the deeper into the season I got. Roughly once an episode, a character will shout something off-screen, barely audible, and only a split second before the scene completely moves on.
Leave her alone!
Finnegan!
I have a gut feeling I'll be okay.
This party just got lame.
Deceiver.
And those random, easily missable non sequiturs are some of my favorite jokes in the show. And it actually became funnier once it was established as a running gag.
Put an end to your father's plan. Get a real job! I am well paid!
See, at first I wasn't sure if the writing quality was improving as I went or if I was just getting into the rhythm of the show. I assume this is a phenomenon that others have experienced. In case not, I'm going to attempt to explain what I mean using other adult animated comedies that I love to hopefully give you a sense of what I'm talking about. Anytime anybody recommended BoJack Horseman, they always warned me that you have to give it at least like 5-6 episodes to really get into it. That ended up being true, and those always existed in my mind as not really being representative of the quality of the rest of the show. Maybe to some extent that is true, but after completing BoJack Horseman and eventually starting it over, I came to realize how well crafted it is right from the very beginning. There are growing pains, but mostly, I just wasn't yet acquainted with the characters or the comedic stylings of that show. So when I again felt this early uncertainty with Little Demon, I decided to start the series over after finishing it. I remember thinking the jokes were maybe 50-50, and I mostly stuck with it because I liked the voice acting, all the demonic stuff, and that I had nothing else to do. I thought Chrissy was kind of a cringy character, and that most of her jokes just didn't really work.
I don't think you know who you're dealing with, Chief. Piss quick! Your pants are on fire!
But after getting to know the character and how painfully awkward she can be, especially when trying to be cool, the writers were actually doing a good job of representing that side of the character.
He spent his life calling out at 52 hertz, which is too high a frequency for other whales to hear.
Sounds like his life's a beach. Ayo! Still workshopping that one.
Which leads into the larger point that this show did an excellent job of establishing these characters, separating their personalities, and giving them all their own distinct flavor of humor and delivery. Chrissy is fairly awkward, Satan is frequently overly graphic and always crass, Laura is usually sarcastic and often borderline insane, Bennigan is a lovable dork, and their neighbor Darlene has a distinct ability to surprise me, but without resorting to shock value humor. More just that she's a great person and leads a full life that we never really see.
Listen, I know I come off as the perky neighbor type, but I can handle fucked up.
Even Erwin, this weird little troll demon that lives in their home, and I didn't even mention in the character section because he's barely in this, is used so incredibly sparingly in a way I appreciate. He doesn't even show up in every episode, and when he does, he has like 2 lines of dialogue. And basically each and every time he's there, I have to do a mental double take and unpack whatever the hell it was he just said.
And why are you tracking my mom like that?
For when I escape.
Oh, sprinklers!
I love when a show knows that withholding a side character like this is the best move. Again, using an example from another show, the one that always comes to mind for me is Creed Bratton in The Office. He's in about half the episodes, only shows up to deliver like 1 joke, and they're always varied and surprising and weird. The characters of Little Demon have depth, are consistent in their mindsets, reactions, and styles of jokes they tell, and it makes for some excellent character-based humor-based comedy. I think Little Demon does a fantastic job of including these bonkers characters and set pieces while pushing this larger story forward, then developing those characters and their relationships along the way. I did find that the majority of the conflicts are that these characters fight and then make up about 6 times each, so that can get a little repetitive. I hope that if they make more of these, they add a little bit more nuance and maybe focus more on the characters growing together in some positive ways rather than simply fighting all the time. The show tackles a few pretty heavy subjects, and I think it has room to grow and improve with how exactly it deals with those. In one episode, we learn Bennigan is suffering from a form of body dysmorphia, but after some magical intervention from Chrissy, he only comes to view himself as more of a literal monster. That felt like an adult version of something I would have grown up seeing in Sabrina the Teenage Witch, attempting to help but only making it worse.
You will see the beauty in everything.
Good day, Santa. Other Santa.
Or Laura coming to realize she has denied herself any personal happiness and is struggling to view herself as a fit parent. The one it handles the best are the strained relationship and mother-daughter dynamics between Laura and Chrissy. The bar for handling real-life trauma, difficulties, and emotional nuance, for me at least, is set sky high by BoJack Horseman. But for a first season, I applaud them for incorporating these storylines fairly seamlessly, handling them very respectfully and maturely, even if half the time the takeaway for the characters can be left feeling a little surface level. Something that goes hand in hand with the way I praised the world building of this show is that they are doing a great job of laying the groundwork for some excellent long-term storytelling. A major storyline through the season is that Satan has been losing power and needs the Antichrist to regain his status. When we're spending time in his domain, mixed in with all the horrific yet frequently goofy nightmares of the metaphysical realms, we actually have several teases of other Satan-tier lords and gods who are set up ahead of time for when the conflict escalates in potential coming seasons. Considering this first season had some pretty far-out conflicts, battles, and displays of power, I can't wait to see the way that climbs and unfolds the longer the series runs. I'll say an overall weak point has been the ramifications of the insane near-world ending shit that keeps occurring every other episode. 2 characters die in the first 5 minutes of this show, and it's almost never addressed again.
You made it! You left so quickly after you murdered those 2 bullies, I never got a chance to thank you, so thank you.
No thanks necessary. Totes my pleasure.
Little Demon flirted with the idea of real-world consequences for the insane behavior and home life of this family, but never quite stuck the landing. Characters reacting casually to major catastrophes can be funny, when it's rooted in the right characters and with the appropriate context. But everyone being casual all the time just feels a little half-baked. So for everything I liked about this series, there's usually one tiny thing that I can see room for improvement in. Other than Laura. She's perfect. No notes, don't change a thing. This video is already becoming so much larger than I originally planned. It's a strange thing when you want to talk about everything in the show, but also don't want to share too many specifics. I hope I navigated that okay, but I do recognize that I kind of need to put a lid on it. I implore you to give this show a chance. Binge it, recommend it to some friends. I think it was like an 8 out of 10, but the potential of the series is apparent in every corner. This devilish magical world, consistently surprisingly excessive style, the escalating threats of the main story, interesting episodic concepts, wonderfully well realized characters, and a fairly unique brand of humor.
Principal Dawkins, I swear those photos aren't real. Bennigan, please tell the truth.
Of course. The truth is
that I nailed Miss Rainey in ways that would make God cry.
It's all there. After you've watched it, come back here and we can complete a summoning circle together to will a second season into existence. Little Demon is badass and you should absolutely go watch it. And P.S., now that we're at the end of the video, I can share that I did include like 2 seconds worth of clips from episode 10.
Remember when I said I would eat you last? I lied.
I won't tell you which. You can watch the show and delight in those reveals for yourself. But they were important for making some of my larger points, and so I slipped them in there anyways. Thank you all so much for watching, thank you to patrons of the channel for their continued support, and I hope to see you all again soon.